Are you confident that your emergency fund will protect you when the unexpected happens? Think again. In this video, we'll show you why your emergency fund might not be enough and how much you really need to prepare for life's uncertainty. So without further ado, let's dive in. Imagine this. You wake up one morning, ready to take on the day, when you suddenly receive a phone call from your boss informing you that you've been laid off. You feel your stomach drop as you realize that you've lost your source of income. You start to panic and wonder how you'll pay food on the table. This is where your emergency fund comes in. But is it enough? The answer is it depends. While financial experts recommend having an emergency fund that can cover 3 to 6 months of living expenses, the truth is that it may not be enough, especially in today's uncertain times. Let's break it down. Firstly, the traditional recommendation of 3 to 6 months of living expenses assumes that you can quickly find a new job if you lose your current one. But with today's job market, finding a new job may take longer than expected, especially if you have a specialized skill set or work in a shrinking industry. In this case, your emergency fund may need to cover a longer period of time, such as 9 months to a year. Additionally, if you're self-employed or a freelancer, you may not have a steady income to rely on. This means that your emergency fund may need to cover your living expenses for an even longer period of time, as it may take longer to secure new clients or projects. But it's not just about the duration of your emergency fund. Unexpected expenses can quickly add up and drain your funds. Let's say you have a medical emergency. Your emergency fund may cover your initial medical bills, but what if you need ongoing treatment or have to take time off work to recover? The same goes for car repairs or home repair. You may think that a few $1,000s in your emergency fund will be enough, but what if the repairs end up costing more than you anticipated? This is where having a larger emergency fund can come in handy. Your emergency fund may also not be enough if you have high levels of debt. If you have credit card debt or student loans, for example, your emergency fund may be better used to pay off that debt rather than being used to cover unexpected expenses. The interest rates on these types of debt are often higher than the interest you'd earn on your emergency fund, so paying off debt first can actually save you money in the long run. So, if 3 to 6 months of living expenses may not be enough, how much do you really need in your emergency fund? The answer depends on your individual circumstances, but there are a few factors to consider. One of the primary factors to consider is your job security. If you have a stable job with a reliable income, you may be able to stick with the traditional recommendation of 3 to 6 months of living expenses in your emergency fund. However, if you work in a shrinking industry, have a specialized skill set, or are self-employed, you may want to aim for a larger emergency fund. These situations may present more uncertainty and volatility, making it more difficult to predict your income and the duration of any financial difficulties. Another factor to consider is your living expenses. If you have a lot of fixed expenses such as a mortgage or car payment, you may need a larger emergency fund than someone who has more flexible expenses. For example, if you have a mortgage, car payment, and children, you may need a larger emergency fund than someone who rents, doesn't own a car, and lives alone. When determining your living expenses, be sure to include all essential expenses such as utilities, groceries, insurance, and any other recurring bills. Your health is also an important factor to consider when determining the size of your emergency fund. If you have a chronic health condition or are prone to accidents, you may want to aim for an emergency fund to cover potential medical expenses. Even with health insurance, out-of-pocket medical expenses can quickly add up, especially if you require ongoing treatment or surgery. If you have high levels of debt, you may want to focus on paying that off before building up your emergency fund. While it's important to have an emergency fund, high levels of debt can prevent you from achieving long-term financial stability. By paying off your debt, you can reduce your monthly expenses and improve your credit score, making it easier to save for emergencies in the future. Once your debt is under control, you can shift your focus to building up your emergency fund. When it comes to the size of your emergency fund, there's no one-size-fits-all answer. However, a good rule of thumb is to aim for at least 6 months of living expenses in your emergency fund. This should provide enough cushion to cover unexpected expenses or a sudden loss of income. If you have a more uncertain or volatile income, you may want to aim for 9 to 12 months of living expenses in your emergency fund. In addition to the size of your emergency fund, it's important to consider where you keep your savings. Ideally, your emergency fund should be held in a separate account that's easily accessible, but not too easily accessible. Keeping your emergency fund in a high-yield savings account or money market account can help you earn a little extra interest while still allowing you to access your funds quickly in case of an emergency. Now that you know how much you need in your emergency fund, let's discuss how to build it up. Here are a few tips to get you started. Number 1. Start small. When it comes to building an emergency fund, it's important to set realistic goals. Starting small means setting aside a small amount of money each month. This could be as little as $10 or $20, depending on your financial situation. The key is to make it a habit and stick to it. You can gradually increase the amount you're saving as you're able to. One way to make it easier to start saving is to create a separate savings account specifically for your emergency fund. This can help you visualize your progress and motivate you to continue saving. Number 2. Save whatever you can. Even if you can only afford to set aside a small amount each month, it's still better than nothing. Every dollar you save brings you closer to your emergency fund goal. You could also try to find ways to increase your income, such as taking on a part-time job or selling things you no longer need. This extra income could go toward your emergency fund. If you're having trouble finding extra money to save, try to cut back on expenses in other areas of your life. Number 3. Automate your saving. Automating your savings is a great way to make sure you're consistently putting money toward your emergency fund. By setting up a direct deposit or recurring transfer, you'll be able to save money without even thinking about it. This can also help you avoid the temptation to spend money on non-essential items. Consider setting up a monthly transfer that coincides with your payday so you'll be less likely to miss the money. Number 4. Cut back on expenses. Cutting back on expenses can be a challenge, but it's a necessary step in building up your emergency fund. Start by reviewing your budget and identifying areas where you can cut back. This could mean reducing your dining out expenses, canceling a subscription service you don't use, or switching to a cheaper cell phone plan. Look for ways to save money without sacrificing too much. You could also try negotiating bills or finding more affordable alternatives to the products and services you currently use. Number 5. Use windfalls wisely. If you receive a windfall, such as a tax refund or a work bonus, it's important to use it wisely. Consider putting some or all of that money into your emergency fund. While it may be tempting to use that money for something fun or frivolous, building up your emergency fund should be a priority. You could also consider using part of the windfall to pay off high-interest debt, such as credit card debt, which will free up more money to put toward your emergency fund in the future. So that's all folks for this video. Leave a like and a comment, and subscribe to our channel for more videos. Thanks for watching.